Hi everyone, my name is Katie White. I'm a transportation planner with Minneapolis Public Works. We're going to get started in a couple of minutes. I see a lot of folks are logging on right now, so I want to give people the opportunity to do all the clicks and permissions that they need to do to join. So I'll wait a couple of minutes before getting started, but thanks again for joining us tonight. Okay, I'm going to get started with the presentation. Thanks again for joining us tonight. I know there are a lot of other things that we could be doing today, but I appreciate you taking the time to come to this open house. I'm going to start with a series of introduction slides, talk about the proposed design for Franklin between Hennepin and Lyndale, and then we'll have time for a question and answer period. And all of this content has a lot of slides coming up, so thank you for your patience as we get going. I'm on mute now. I'm so sorry, everyone. Thank you so much. I just went quiet, so I'm wondering if my team, either Mike or Matthew, could let me know where I left off so I don't repeat too much.
Katie, I believe you should start from the beginning.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for your patience.
Sorry.
My name is Katie White. I'm a transportation planner in Public Works. We are, I believe, going to be joined by Rick Kreiser, who's a project manager on the engineering side of Public Works. I don't believe he's here right now, but I wanted to, I'll make sure he introduces himself if he's able to join us. And then Matthew, if you could introduce yourself briefly.
Hello, my name is Matthew Deardahl. I'm a bicycle and pedestrian coordinator for Public Works.
And Matthew's going to be our moderator today. So if questions that are thrown into the question and answer box on your screen some of them will be read aloud by Matthew and directing questions to either me or Rick. Also on today's call is Mike Samuelson. He's a transportation planner in our department as well. He's not going to be on the call talking, but he is going to be helping to moderate the question and answer box. So I want to thank him for his contributions today and for taking the time to participate with us. Really important work, and I'm glad to have him here today. Okay, well, we're all getting used to the technology. Where's my next one? Here we go. So communication in changing times. As we live in this COVID-19 global pandemic, a lot of what we do in public works has stayed the same, but a lot of it has changed over the last several months, including how we communicate about our projects. All of our project communication will be virtual or over the phone these days. We are going to continue to update our project website for this work, host virtual open houses like this one, attend virtual neighborhood meetings. We're going to the Lowry Hill East neighborhood next Wednesday evening. And I will be holding office hours over the phone tomorrow and Friday with more details on a future slide. And that is a reality in how we need to do our work. And it comes with glitches like me accidentally muting myself, and that's going to happen. So it's not an ideal environment. I would certainly rather be meeting with all of you in person tonight and having face-to-face conversations. And I think it's incredibly necessary that we meet virtually, but we do lose something. So I want to thank you for your grace and patience as I mute myself on a public call, and looking forward to connecting with you in as many different ways as possible about this project that aren't face-to-face. So it's not ideal, but it's what we're working with, and thank you for your flexibility, and hopefully we can find a communication method with you that works. I also want to call attention to recent events in Minneapolis and action taken by the City Council in declaring racism as a public health crisis. Part of the resolution that the City Council passed reads, "Racism in all its forms causes persistent discrimination and disparities, desperate outcomes in many areas of life, including housing, education, health, employment, public safety, and criminal justice." Since we live in a world with systemic racism, it's important to note that this colors a lot of what has happened, what is happening in the city, and also that there are, in a lot of ways, more important things happening than the reconstruction of streets and neighborhoods, and that can, living in this environment just creates a place where not everyone can participate in every process. And so that's a reality that we're living with, sort of like how we're living with the pandemic also right now. So meeting logistics, we have a 30-minute presentation approximately, followed by perhaps a 30-minute question and answer period. We'll see how many questions we can get through. So there's a couple of different ways that people have logged on here today. You might be on your phone, you might be on a desktop computer. I recommend using the text box feature to ask questions about the team tools or about the Franklin West project in its entirety. If it's a really simple question about technology needs or something like you were wondering, hey, what's the name of the person who's speaking right now, then Mike will just respond in the text box to you directly, sort of on a one-to-one basis, and you should be able to look there for your answer. If you're asking another question about, hey, why is that bus stop located where it is? That's the kind of question that's going to be held for the Q&A in about 30 minutes. And then Mike and Matthew will work to ask that question then over the air so that other people can hear the question and other people can hear my response to that question. So as a result, not all questions will be visible to all participants. And so that's how this feature works if you've never participated in one of these before. Please only ask questions related to this project. And if we do have a lot of questions tonight that we aren't able to get to, we will take all of them, they're all written down, and then we will provide written answers to those unanswered questions and post a document with all of those to the project website. So I hope we can get through a lot of questions tonight, but I want to let everyone know that there's a process in place in case we are overwhelmed with comments. So some logistics again. You can click the Ask a Question button. This might be in your lower right corner. It might be on the bottom of your screen. It really varies based on the system, but hopefully you can find the Ask a Question button. And in the mobile version, it's on the upper right side of your screen. But if you lose audio, check to see if you've paused the live meeting. And this is sort of a weird quirk that you'll be able to catch back up eventually, but it is a very common mistake to accidentally pause the live meeting on the participant's end. So onto the project itself, a little bit of background summary. Why are we reconstructing Franklin Avenue between Hennepin and Lyndale Avenues? It's an opportunity to reimagine our right-of-way. People are using the street differently today than they were when the street was first or last rebuilt. And it was last rebuilt about 60 years ago. And the way we do our math on pavement condition and other features on the street says that this one is due for improvement. What does it mean to reconstruct? We replace all the pavement, curb, gutter, some of the utility improvements that might not be visible, some things going on underneath the asphalt and concrete. Gives us an opportunity to improve walkways and non-ADA compliant areas, provide streetscape improvements, and refresh signage and striping. What is the schedule for the project? We are spending 2020 in what's called concept design, where we think about the basic elements of the street. Usually what you can see with your eyes is what we decide at this point in the process. We'll have another public meeting like this in early 2021 with what we're calling sort of like a final design of basically by February, March, April-ish of 2021, you should be able to come to the next of these open houses and get a pretty good idea of what is going to end up being constructed. Then we spend the rest of 2021 doing a lot of detailed engineering work. This is a lot of stuff that might not be immediately apparent, but a lot of decisions have to be made about grading and other engineering specifications or utility placement. So that happens in 2021 with construction in the year of 2022. This is expected to take one construction season, which in Minnesota is spring to fall, essentially. So a solid 6 months or so. So what are the project goals? To improve the pedestrian experience, provide an all ages and abilities bicycle facility along and across Franklin, support existing and future development along the corridor, and to incorporate green infrastructure to collect stormwater runoff. So as I mentioned earlier, we did have an open house earlier in June, and as part of that initial outreach process, we met with the neighborhood, and we also put out a SurveyMonkey survey, and I think it must have been close to 200 responses, which was pretty good. I was very happy with that. And the responses in general from the neighborhood indicated a strong interest in improving the environment for walking and biking. And this was, the SurveyMonkey tool had a prioritization exercise and asked you to rank where we should be putting some effort. And walking was absolutely the #1 priority, and biking was the #2. Some people had them more interchangeable. So that was the biggest takeaway from the prioritization exercise. As part of the survey, we also had a lot of free responses asking about perceptions and things that needed improvement. There's concern about safe travel along and also across Franklin, interest in improving the transit experience, requests for a lot of greening. And there's a difference between just greening visually and green infrastructure. And there's a lot of interest in greening improvements because it would enhance the pedestrian experience and make it a more welcoming place to walk. There were also a lot of specific requests for speed reduction for vehicles and some comments in favor of parking and car access, particularly in light of the pandemic, understanding that a lot of restaurants now were drive up or pick up or curbside or takeout, concerned that public transit might not be safe. So we did get some comments about that. Again, this was in late June. So this is the proposed design. I'm going to go through some more slides, and this design won't be on every slide, or this graphic won't be on every slide. It will be on most, though. So I understand it might be frustrating if you're looking at something and I flip to the next page. And so I acknowledge that as a limitation of this format, and I apologize in advance. I will be showing this graphic several times. So first I want to walk through it with everyone. and then we'll walk through the components of the overall design. If you look at this number 1 right in the middle of the graphic, the number 1 indicates where this cross section here is at the bottom of the screen. And so the cross section is from north to south, from left to right. So we start with the sidewalk on the north side of the street, followed by the tactile strip, followed by the bike lane, followed by the boulevard, parking lane, 2 car lanes, followed by the boulevard, bicycle lane, tactile strip, pedestrian on the south side of the graphic. So I hope that's helpful, but that's meant to be that number 1 is the cross section of that space in the middle of the screen. A couple other things I'll call out. The transit stop at Hennepin and Franklin is currently shown to be pretty close to Hennepin Avenue. It's actually supposed to be much closer to Bryant, at least halfway through the block, if not closer to Bryant. So I'll call that out right now as a correction or just a misrepresentation of what we have planned here. But otherwise, I hope that this is fairly understandable and readable, that we're looking at about 6 feet of pedestrian space, a 1-foot tactile strip, which I'll talk about in a minute, 5-foot bike lane. The intent is for the bike lane to go in each direction, one on each side of the street, 1 way in each direction, and then green space, parking facility, and travel lanes. So I'll walk through some of the project components, but again, you'll be seeing this graphic many times, so hopefully we'll be able to track with what's happening. There are some new components that don't really exist on Franklin Avenue today that we have incorporated into this design. The first is to place a median at the Bryant Avenue Bicycle Boulevard. Currently, there's a median that acts as sort of a halfway point. Some people treat it as a refuge as they're trying to cross Franklin while on Bryant. And this median is more of that, and it would prohibit left turns. So I'll actually have more slides on that, so I'll go a little quicker through this. We have green space on most block segments, but not on all. We have more comfortable pedestrian space. This is much wider. The bicycle lane is behind the curb at sidewalk height. We have some improved bus stops. We are retaining 5 parking spaces, excuse me, along the corridor. So more detail. And here I've zoomed in a little bit on what this median looks like. Bryant Avenue is a bicycle boulevard. It connects to the Loring Greenway Bridge, which is just to the north of this location. And the bicycle boulevard is pretty high number of users. And so this is an important crossing where we heard a lot of feedback. It feels unsafe. So this bicycle boulevard provides more protection to bicycle users. You'll see that there are 2 channels here, or I should say 4. The 2 on the outside edges are for pedestrians, is where a normal crosswalk would be. And then 2 channels in the middle of the street going north-south would be for cyclists. And this would then prohibit left turns at Bryant. So vehicle traffic would not be able to turn left. You can take right turns in and right turns out of the intersection, but not left turns. We have had some crashes at this intersection and believe that this median would then reduce the number of crashes also seen in the neighborhood. This design would also be mountable. We call it mountable for emergency vehicles so that fire and EMS could make left turns if needed, but regular vehicle traffic would not. And I'll also call out that we have this designed right now as concrete. The current median that's out there today does have some vegetation planted there. And right now we're proceeding with a concrete design. So here's the graphic again. You'll see it many more times. We're talking about an off-street bicycle facility. This is 5 feet wide, 1 on the north side of the street, 1 on the south side of the street. It is behind the curb at sidewalk height, and it's in the layout from east to west view. It's this darker gray color. It's what's called the black ice treatment. It's just sort of a darker, blacker concrete. And it's not as black as asphalt, but it's not as light as concrete, and it stands out. You can currently see similar treatments on the existing Washington Avenue downtown, and also the newly reopened Hennepin Avenue downtown has this treatment as well. So the idea is if you're going eastbound on Franklin, you'll use the bike path on the south side of the street. If you're going westbound on Franklin, you'll use the facility on the north side of the street. We are looking at including green space on most block segments. Today, there is no green space on Franklin in the public right-of-way. So we're increasing it from 0 feet of green space to a minimum of 3.5 feet on most segments. The north side of Franklin between Bryant and Aldrich could see about 10 feet of boulevard space, allowing for larger trees. Usually 4 feet is the minimum seen for a smaller tree, but with 10 feet of boulevard space, we could get something really substantial maybe. I'm not sure what breeds or species we'd be talking about, but it's really pretty exciting to see green space included in most spots along this corridor. The exception is at the transit stops. You'll notice that it looks less likely that we will have green space right next to the transit stops because of the need of front and back door boarding at those locations. More comfortable pedestrian space. In this diagram, we're looking at a pedestrian realm of typically 6 feet wide, if not wider in some locations. And then this is this tactile strip, and this is relatively new to the city, so I want to take a moment to describe it. Right now, if you have the sidewalk or the pedestrian space coming up right next to the bicycle space, there's a little concern that, you know, the bicycle might veer into the sidewalk space, or a pedestrian or user with low vision or using a mobility aid to get around might accidentally come into the bicycle space and cause an unintentional collision. And so this tactile strip is relatively new to the city. It's being rolled out on the new Hennepin Avenue downtown right now. And it's not as red as this graphic. It's sort of like a rust or a brick color red. So it's visual in that you can see it's a different color compared to the concrete. And it's also a little tactile strip, sort of like you see at some ADA ramps. So it's a physical difference as well, without being too vertical. You know, it's not sticking up 2 inches. So that's new, and I think that some people might not have seen that before, so I wanted to call it out. Currently, the pedestrian space is right up on the curbs on Franklin, giving no separation between pedestrians and moving car traffic. And under this design, the pedestrian space is next to the buildings and a little bit further from the driving space. We're also looking at including better, improved bus stops along this corridor. The biggest change is most likely to be experienced in this southeast corner of Hennepin Avenue. Again, the little T sign in this graphic is too close to Hennepin Avenue. We want to see it further to the east to be mid-block or a little closer to Bryant. But right now, this bus stop for Route 2 is just a signpost on the side of the road. And the shelter is actually sort of on Hennepin Avenue, and it's a shared shelter for folks waiting for the 6 on Hennepin Avenue. So the intent here is to give a shelter just for people using Route 2, actually where the boarding is happening on Route 2. We had a lot of meetings to discuss the amount of space needed in order to allow comfortable flow from a shelter and walking around the shelter while still avoiding the bicycle facility. And I think we got to a good place with that. And so hopefully there shouldn't be any conflicts there under this design. On the other side of the corridor at Lyndale in the southwest corner, looking for a full shelter there. And then in the northwest corner of Lyndale, we're looking at having the bus stop roughly where it is today still. But it's mostly people getting off the bus. Since this is the end of the Route 2, there aren't a lot of people getting on the bus at this location. So it will remain to be a signpost with a bench that is currently there today. Another part of this design involves retaining 5 parking spaces. They will all be located on the north side of the street, and they aren't called out on this very well, except in this cross section at the very bottom. But if you see these white lines in the road, that indicates parking spots. So there will be 3 in the middle on the way to Aldrich. in this bay feature. So this pulls the cars a little bit out of traffic, providing a safer space for people who are getting out and using those parking spaces, provides a little bit more protection from moving traffic. The other 2 parking spots then are on the east side of Aldrich, one on either side of this driveway here. Those won't be in the bays, but will be available for use. Right now, there are a lot of parking restrictions on Franklin. They're actually kind of hard to keep track of. What day is it? What time is it? Can I park here? Can I park here for how long? And we haven't made any determination yet on what potential restrictions would be in place, time-based, resident-based, anything like that. So again, here's the overall proposed design. I will come back to this graphic, but I'm going to transition into some slides to gear us up for the Q&A. But this graphic will come back. Again, here's the logistics questions. Mike and Matthew are working on organizing the questions right now. So please, based on the information you've heard so far, ask a question, something I might have not been clear on, or something that you would like more information about. And then Matthew will moderate the discussion. I don't think that Rick has logged on, but Matthew can correct me. So I'll be answering the questions that Matthew shares from the group. I will be posting a recording of this meeting. This is being recorded right now, and this will be posted on the project website, I think as soon as tomorrow. I mean, there's 2 or 3 other people who have to help make this happen, but it could be tomorrow or Friday, certainly Monday at the latest. The recording of this presentation will be posted. So if you would like to share it with others, please do so. If other people who might be interested. I have also set up a SurveyMonkey, and this will be posted on the project website as well. I know sometimes it's hard to write down these funny URLs, but there's a very simple SurveyMonkey survey about your feedback on each of these project design elements and overall comments that you might have. I'm going to be blocking off time in my day, Thursday and Friday, tomorrow and Friday, to take questions from you, since I can't do it in person tonight as much as I wish I could. And so please call my cell phone number, which is listed here and on the project website, tomorrow or Friday during these times, and we can have a conversation about these project elements. So one last slide, I think, before I leave it on the design page. Just questions to help prompt discussion. What is your primary mode along this corridor? Scooters, cars, anything else? How do you use Franklin? Do you use it to get to work? Do you live near Franklin? And one question is unique to this corridor is, you know, that median at Bryant right now has plantings in it, but we're currently showing a design with just concrete using on that median. And so I'm wondering if there's energy from nearby residents or businesses to maintain attractive plants along the enhanced boulevard space or the Bryant median. And that's just something that would be useful information to have over the next few months before we get to this final design in early 2021. So I'm going to stop flipping through pages and leave the graphic here for purposes of discussion, unless one of the questions that I get from Matthew points me in a different direction. It is just about 7:30, so Matthew, I'm happy to start taking questions, and hopefully I'll remember to unmute myself.
Okay, very good. And just to note, you're right, Rick has not logged on, so Katie, it'll be your show. And we have a healthy amount of questions and look forward to seeing more as they roll in. So why don't we just get started? Katie, you've talked about extending the project to include the way too wide section of Franklin between Hennepin and Colfax, parentheses, should be DuPont. Has that been ruled out?
Sure, that's a great question. This project will not be reconstructing on the other side of Hennepin. I do think that the Hennepin Avenue project limits, last I heard, hadn't yet been determined, and that could be old information at this point. But like on this graphic here at Hennepin Avenue, the bike lanes just kind of end. And I think the Hennepin Avenue project is going to decide what those corridors look like. For folks who aren't familiar, Franklin will be reconstructed in the year 2022, and Hennepin Avenue will be constructed in the year 2023. And so we don't want to build something in 2022 that's just going to be ripped out the next year, and we'll wait for the Hennepin Avenue design to decide. And I think that the Hennepin Avenue project at this point has more likelihood of touching anything on Franklin on the west side of Hennepin, but not this project.
So related, is this design at Bryant intended to allow bikes to turn left from Franklin and to go north onto Bryant? I'm assuming from the south or from the north. Anyway, I asked because the very early Hennepin plans have indicated an option routing bike traffic from Hennepin onto Franklin and then onto Bryant. So it sounds like it's a connection question.
Sure, and that's a really important discussion to have. I know that the Hennepin project is looking at potential bicycle routes on Hennepin and those that aren't, and so that's definitely a consideration. If that is the path that the Hennepin Avenue project moves in, then yes, we would want to design the Bryant median to accommodate those movements. That has not been incorporated into the design you see today, so that could be then a potential change in future iterations, by spring. If that's the direction that Hennepin is moving, then I would expect this median to change to allow bicycle movements more safely to make that left to get on the Loring Greenway.
Very good. Next question. Tough competition against the budget hearing tonight. How can people who care about both participate?
Yes, thank you for that question. That was certainly an oversight on my part. I am hoping that folks are able to listen to the recording of the presentation tomorrow. We'll also put a PDF of this graphic, or JPEG, I'm not sure what format, as a standalone file on the website as well for folks to review on their own. I do hope people, though, take the time to listen to the presentation, if not for the first part, but for the Q&A part, because I think that's where a lot of people might have similar questions. So I understand that people might be more interested in the budget conversations tonight, but I am, because, especially because we're limited by the conditions of the pandemic, really open to phone calls, one-on-one basis, and I want to spend some time doing that. So if you know people who are in line, the virtual line, to comment tonight at the budget hearing, please pass along my phone number and tell them to get in touch with me.
Next question. If the bike lane will be behind the curb, what measures will be taken to ensure that snow does not get piled into the bike lane?
That's a great question. And actually, Matthew knows more about the details here than I do.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, why don't you take this one, Matthew?
So, I mean, it is a good question. We don't want that to happen. We don't want bike lanes to have snow in them. I often say that protected bike lanes such as this are really great for winter because we, as we build them, we add them to the priority route for clearance of snow and ice. And so in my opinion, every time we take a street without a bike lane or with just a standard bike lane and upgrade it to protected or separated, as we're proposing here, the level of service or the likelihood that that will be a good experience increases quite a bit. So that's kind of my answer there. I think it's a positive for winter maintenance to have them protected, and then it really is just a matter of making sure that the vehicles that get in there to clear it, usually bobcats, I think in this case, get the corners and get the driveway crossings and things like that, and make sure it stays clear and rideable.
The other thing I remember you saying, Matthew, about this is that by having the bicycle space next to the pedestrian space, that reduces the number of windrows, or the snow barriers that accumulate over time. And so we were talking about maybe having a design where the bikes and peds wouldn't be next to each other, but this actually is probably better from a snow clearance perspective.
Right, I agree. All right, next question. Does the 6 foot wide sidewalk number include the furniture zone? Many nearby sidewalks keep having streetlights and bus shelters and utility and signposts that make them narrower than they seem on paper.
Sure. Our intention is for signposts and I think most lighting to be in sort of the curb space, which isn't outlined in this bottom graphic, but we're looking at about 18 inches of like a furnishing zone for signs and lighting next to the street. And so I'm pretty sure most of that will be out of the pedestrian space, and the transit stops are certainly out of the pedestrian space since they are closer to the street and the pedestrian space is closer to the buildings. So I hope that answers your question.
I think so. I think, as you said, the answer is no, right? Like there will be 6 feet. There will be 6 feet of clear sidewalk space.
Yeah, I can't think of any instance where that's not true.
Right. All right. Next, would this design be limiting if future ABRT route, with size demands of a ABRT caliber stations were established along Franklin?
That's a great question. We did talk with Metro Transit in developing, before we brought this graphic to the public, we did have a conversation about it with Metro Transit to see if it would meet their needs. And right now they believe it is a pretty good design. It meets their needs for what they see as the vision of Route 2. If that changes over time, I'm not sure if that would bring some changes. I know that their shelter dimensions are pretty substantial for ABRT stations. And so this one at Hennepin Avenue would probably have the most amount of space available to them. But right now, it meets their needs for what they see as happening in the next few years. So yeah.
Next question. 5 parking spaces is so few. Why compromise green space to accommodate so few drivers?
Might ask you to ask that question again. Compromise green space.
So I think the question is, we're adding parking, maybe about 5 parking spaces, and that's a low number. But the question is, why add the parking and compromise green space?
Oh, okay. I thought the question asker was going in a different direction. Please in the chat or call me tomorrow if I'm wrong. We did hear a lot of comments from neighbors that are concerned about lack of parking in the area. We did do a parking survey, and this was something that I shared at our first open house over the summer. And while the side streets of Aldrich and Bryant were very well parked up at all periods of the day, Bryant itself was not used as much. Franklin itself, sorry, was not used as much. And so we left a few because of some resident feedback, but that is how we ended up with where we are from a design perspective. There's other things that took up space that aren't related to green space, but took up space in this design. I just want to call out the Bryant median. To the east of the median, there's the yellow painted lines of like what you would see on the street for yellow paint. And this taper actually is really important. And so I think some people might also ask, hey, you could put more green space in there. But actually we need a gradual taper space here for car traffic because this is going up that pretty steep hill. And also bus traffic also requested a little bit more space going up this hill. So that's why it might look wider for cars when the space might have been used for something else. Again, I hope Matthew and I are understanding your question. Please give me a call tomorrow if we're not.
Okay. Still on parking bays. Will the parking bays be reserved for delivery vehicles at all?
That's a great question, and I think now's the right time to ask that question. If there's a strong sentiment from nearby residents that delivery vehicles should be prioritized in that manner, that is absolutely something we want to hear at this point. If that's, if this is a very heavy neighborhood for, Amazon Prime deliveries and DoorDash deliveries and whatever else, if that would be a helpful amenity to the neighborhood, please let me know.
Okay. Are we expecting to eventually see more commercial development along this stretch?
Another great question. We do know of a few proposed developments, but I don't know that they're very commercial. The first is on Lyndale Avenue in the northwest corner. I think it was Vision Loss Resources. And that facility has been closed, I believe, for several months now. And there was a proposed development they had a construction date, but they've currently postponed that construction start due to the pandemic. And we have not yet heard of a new construction start date. We're not sure if the delay in construction will then cause a delay in commercial uses. I believe that the original development did have commercial uses on the first floor. So I'm not sure if that will change if the proposal comes back for review. Of course, the southwest corner of Lyndale just wrapped up a few months ago, a large construction project with commercial uses on the first floor. And then more recently if you look at Aldrich in the southeast corner, that building was recently demolished and is now flat. And development has come in for that section. And right now, I think it is just housing, but it's not final yet. And there's the discussion about making it a commercial space. So this driveway here, we've talked with the architect. The architect does believe that is the most likely location of the driveway for that project, regardless of residential and commercial uses. Matthew, did I answer all the parts of that question?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, thanks.
Next question. Will the pedestrian crosswalks be painted?
That's a good question. Maybe I'll ask you, Matthew. I don't believe they are painted at a place like Aldrich, but I'm wondering if they would be painted at Bryant going north-south.
Yes, so the city's policy is typically to mark crosswalks at signalized locations and not at unsignalized locations, unless there are other physical improvements as well, which can include the median at Bryant. So yes, I believe that should be painted with our standard, we call them zebra or continental stripes, those big blocks. And then there's one other thing. Oh yeah, and then sometimes we also, if we have, flashing lights that indicate a crossing, we'll paint them there as well. So I would say Bryant should be striped and the others likely not.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Matthew.
Oh, yep, still me. What is the timeline for reconstruction of Franklin to the east and to the west, especially to the future LRT station?
Sure, great question. The short answer is I have not seen any dates for the reconstruction of either segments of those of Franklin. We do know that the county completed, so on the east side of Lyndale, it's a county road. Franklin is a county road. And we do know that the county completed a study which had some public engagement components in 2019. I think they concluded it to talk about what the future of Franklin Avenue could look like on their side, essentially, of the street. We have not seen a date for potential reconstruction. We do know that as you get a little bit further east to Blaisdell, which is almost to Nicollet, from Blaisdell to Chicago, it's getting reconstructed in, I think, 2025 or 2026. And that will be a huge moment to reimagine that stretch of Franklin. But again, that's not adjacent to Lyndale there. Then on the west side of Hennepin Avenue, we do not have a reconstruction date for that stretch of Franklin as it leads to the future light rail station, but we are seeing a repavement project on that stretch of Franklin in 2021. So the repavement will be happening next year. So there's a lot happening in this part of the city in general over the next several years, as I think a lot of the residents here are aware, and those are just some of the projects. Okay,
and this is related. So how will the the design of this project interact with the design of Franklin to the east, which is county controlled, different than city?
Sure, that's a great question. You know, the county also, I mean, the county runs Franklin all the way from Lyndale, I think, to the river, even across the river. I mean, they have so much of Franklin. And what they've done is sort of in the Highway 55 area and on both sides of it, they've put in bike lanes and changed from 4 lanes to 3 lanes in some places. And they've done a lot of work 10, 15 years ago on various parts of Franklin. And so I think the county recognizes that it's all one street and it's all one network. And so while we can't say, you know, we don't, I mean, the construction year is so far off, we can't say what the county has planned. They recognize that this stretch of Franklin that is owned by the city is going to be reconstructed, and that is something for their consideration as they go about their work.
All right, next question. Is the city's full right-of-way being used in this design?
That is an excellent question as well. I love these. These are really, really good questions tonight. Yeah. I appreciate them a lot. I believe almost everywhere, yes. There might be 2 examples where 2 feet of encroachments are being retained and not being moved. So let me see if I can. This is a simple graphic, so I don't want to say anything incorrectly if the technical information is not correct. So between Bryant and Aldrich, you'll see a jog in the bicycle facility, and I believe there might be a retaining wall in that space. And then directly on the north side of that, again between Bryant and Aldrich, there is some, and I'm spacing on it again, call me tomorrow. There is something near that driveway, I believe, that is 2 feet into the space, into the right of way. So I think in the final design of this, I heard about this last week, I think this might jog 2 feet, the bike lane and the pedestrian space might jog 2 feet. The one space where the city is using all of its right of way, well, I mean, everywhere else, I believe the city is using all of its right of way. Between Hennepin Avenue and Bryant on the south side of the street, there is currently a decorative fence in the city's right of way. And the city, we've talked with the property owner about relocating the fence out of the right of way and onto private property. But that has already been incorporated into the design presented here today. So I hope that's the right information that you were looking for.
Cool. How can we influence the boundaries of the Hennepin Avenue project to, oops, sorry I asked that one. Next question. What sort of treatments or signage will we put in place to indicate to drivers on Franklin Ave that north-south bike travel is allowed? Currently, there's a very subtle bike boulevard about mid-block between Aldrich and Franklin, and that doesn't seem to get people to look.
That's a great question. I would ask Matthew that question, and I would wonder if there is something that's typical for us, or if a larger median will do that work.
Yes. So first of all, I think the existing condition is far less than ideal. So just the presence of the wider median with the cut throughs is going to be so much more comfortable and so much more pleasant for people. There's an example of what we're talking about at 40th Street East and Cedar Avenue South. Very similar situation. In this case, it's signalized and the other isn't. But there's a lot of different things that indicate to people that there's going to be bikes. So a bike lane for a stretch of it appears, so a bike symbol on the street. There's a white bicycle boulevard sign in the area that we don't use quite as standard, and I think we should do that. And then there's a bike, essentially a push button for the signal. So while we may not use all of that, we'll have a variety of indicators that it is for the bike crossing. But again, just the presence of it, I think, is going to be a vast improvement.
Thanks, Matthew.
Next question. How will bike riders be protected from right and left hooks at Hennepin and Lyndale?
Sure. I don't know that that's going to be addressed with this project because of the project limits at Hennepin Avenue. I think that will fold in those corners. Lyndale Avenue is a county-owned street, and we are not proposing any modifications to Lyndale Avenue. I think that we'll tie into the infrastructure there, with the curb ramps to cross Lyndale. But I don't even think we're rebuilding the receiving end on Lyndale as part of this project. If you give me a call tomorrow, we can talk about it and I'll find the right answer. But I don't believe the intent is to have any modifications on Lyndale itself.
Okay. Is it too late to get bike lanes striped on Franklin to the west with the repaving project? This is going to be a direct connection to the 21st Street station. I know this isn't your project, but it seems like a big missed opportunity if not even striped lanes are added.
Yeah, so as for folks who are familiar, repaving project also comes, of course, with new striping, fresh paint, once we put on fresh asphalt. And the striping plan for that project hasn't been determined yet. I think there is usually, I think the last I heard about this project, there would be some, I can't remember the name of the document. That's an update, and it's part of a broader engagement that I think, someone ends up going to the neighborhood to talk about the plans. And I think that's been, that's a couple months away yet, or at least a month away yet. And so the plans for Franklin on the west side of Hennepin are not finalized yet. And we're not at a position right now to share them. Otherwise, I probably would have brought them with me today. So I don't have a final answer on that yet because there isn't a final plan. And so I think that the striping plan will be determined in the next couple of months.
I'll also note, I'd like to add that there seems to be a lot of interest in bike connections east and west of this project, which makes a lot of sense. And we can make sure that others on our team hear about this feedback. So I think that'll be useful as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Is this an eventual plan to make Franklin another bike lane with no parking? It makes no sense to do just Franklin between Hennepin and Lyndale when people who ride off of the Loring Greenway do not turn on Franklin when the bike lanes stop at Hennepin and Lyndale.
Oh, wait, you're gonna have to say that second half again.
So I think the way I'm interpreting this is that if we don't make connections, this will just be like 3 blocks of bike lane. Yep. But I will read it again. It makes no sense to do just Franklin between Hennepin and Lyndale when people who ride from the Loring Greenway do not turn on Franklin when the bike lanes stop at Hennepin and Lyndale.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with the person asking the question about making a comment about people who are using the Lyndale Greenway. I think I agree that a lot of people who use the Greenway just keep going south. And so I think that that's probably a reasonable expectation for users. But we do hear a lot, and I know the county heard this a lot during their Franklin study in 2018 and 2019, that there are not a lot of good east-west connections across South Minneapolis. Franklin in particular, Franklin goes over 35W, Franklin goes over the Mississippi River. Franklin is one of the very few continuous routes. And so the intent here is, it's 3 blocks today because we have a 3-block opportunity to make some changes. And the intent is that over time, this will just be 3 blocks of a much longer corridor.
Okay. Are the bus stops recessed and not stopped in the lane? When you turn off of Lyndale and go west, the bus stops in the lane, now causing backups on Lyndale and the intersection.
Sure,
into
Lyndale. No, there are no, I think sometimes they're called bus bays where the bus pulls off. There are no bus bays currently designed in this plan. Metro Transit has a hard time with bus bays because it can be hard for the bus to get back into moving traffic. A lot of drivers don't let them in, and so it slows down service. Our traffic team has taken a look at this. I think that what the person asking this question is describing westbound on Lyndale, off of Lyndale, also is a question mark coming off of Hennepin eastbound on Franklin. And it's something that our traffic department has taken a look at because they are concerned about backups. And we have pulled the stops a little bit further away from Lyndale and Hennepin. But the backups should not be impacting traffic significantly based on that feedback so far.
Okay, the next one is about signals. Is there any chance you will have the opportunity with this project to move the signals at the Hennepin and Lyndale intersection to the near side of the intersections to protect the crosswalks?
Oh, I want to hear that again. Protect the crosswalks by moving the signals to the near side.
Yeah, so is there a chance that you'll have the opportunity with this project to move the signals at the Hennepin and Lyndale intersections to the near side of the intersections to protect the crosswalks?
I don't know that I'm familiar with that. So I guess short answer is no. I guess I'll say the signal work on Hennepin is folded into the Hennepin Avenue project. Depending on what Hennepin Avenue project advances, that will probably drive most of the signal placement for their work. And then also Lyndale being a county street, while the city operates the signals, the city won't be moving signals without working with the county on it. And right now we're not anticipating work on Lyndale as part of this proposed design.
Okay. I may have missed this, but will the crossings of the driveways be raised crossings?
The crossings of the driveways will be flush with where the crossings currently are. So if the question is if they will be tabled crossings at the driveways, I think the answer is no. But if there won't be a depression, sometimes in older facilities across the city, when a sidewalk gets to a driveway, it's no longer flat and you have to walk into the trough of the driveway and then walk back out of it. And that is not going to be the case. These driveways will be flat with the bike space and the ped space.
And so maybe is a way to look at that as I guess my own follow-up, Katie, but that we'll essentially, by the look of it, will hopefully prioritize, make it look like the bike is carrying through.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Good. Is there any way to reduce the number of mid-block curb cuts?
I don't believe that this project will be reducing the number of mid-block curb cuts. We do need to provide access to property owners, and I think this is the minimum that we can do. The only new curb cut is going to be, as I mentioned earlier, if you're looking at the Aldrich intersection, the southeast corner redevelopment, there's 2 driveways there. The one on the left is a new curb cut, but I think it's going to be the only curb cut for that entire apartment building. So I think it's a pretty minimal impact for what the rest of the building is proposed to be.
Okay. I guess I do have maybe a couple more. So there's a follow-up comment to the signal one, and I'll just read it. It says, so the question that we were kind of wrestling with about whether or not we're going to move the signals to the near side, the comment was this would force cars to stay further back and see the signal.
Oh, sure.
And stay out of the crosswalks.
Sure. I think, yeah, thank you for that clarification. I think that I understand what you're describing. I think that would be new in the city, and that's something that would be a broader policy change for signal placement and how signals operate than what this project is going to be undertaking. I don't know, Matthew, if you're more familiar with signal conversations and how those choices are made.
I'm not. I don't have anything to add on that.
Okay.
Okay, a couple more. Just real quick. I think we talked about this a little bit, but I'll just double check. It's possible this could. Is it possible this could be a BRT corridor before this segment is up for reconstruction? Is next.
Yeah, Metro Transit's been undergoing a process called Network Next, where they've been identifying what the next round of ABRT projects will be, since the first couple letters of the alphabet are pretty far advanced in planning and eventual construction. And while the Network Next process hasn't concluded, the most recent iteration did eliminate Route 2 from consideration for future ABRT at this time. So it's not saying never, but certainly not within the next several years.
And then a different type of question about tabled is, how can we get tabled crossings for the crosswalks?
Yeah, a very smart question. I think that that's something that we'll be evaluating between now and spring of 2021. I think that there are some concerns about the steepness of the hill, especially along Aldrich. So we will advance that question and find an answer about crossing Aldrich and Bryant, and the potential for tabled crossings. I'm not a soils engineer, but I think there is a concern about the steep hill and what that means for tabled crossings.
Okay. I will just pause for a second to see if Mike does have anything else that we should say. I think that's all the questions that I have. And that is it from Mike. So Katie, back to you. No more questions.
Okay. Thank you so much, Matthew and Mike, for helping me today. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that we are ending now because my work computer just gave me a note saying that I need to restart my computer in the next 15 minutes.
Me too.
So thanks everybody for coming tonight. I know attentions have been divided with the budget hearing, and I appreciate everyone coming to listen to this conversation and participating in it as best we can under these challenging circumstances. So please give me a call tomorrow or Friday morning. Email me. I want to make sure that people's questions are answered. I'm also going to I would encourage you and your friends to share the SurveyMonkey link, which I'm putting back on the screen. So take the SurveyMonkey and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the design elements that we're incorporating. So with that, I'll say good night and hopefully talk to you soon. Thank you so much.